Hey everybody, Steve Burns here. Now I've just set up my scene so with a 5 by 5 inch rectangle or document at 200 pixels per inch. All right, down here I just simply made a gradient background using an adjustment layer, and of course I have my new layer right above it. So we're currently working in a 2D scene. In other words, an X and Y axis is what we have available to us. What we want to do is alter this into a 3D scene where we're going to introduce that the one axis that actually throws everybody off and makes 3D so complicated, which is that Z axis. So we're going to work in X, Y, and Z. Now, how am I going to accomplish this? Now, let me share with you just very quickly how I have things set up here inside Photoshop. I have my layers panels, channels, 3D paths, and libraries in one layer or one panel group. Right below it, I have my properties attached to it. Why? Because once I create a 3D object, the two areas I'm going to be working in on a regular basis is going to be my 3D panel and my properties. And you're gonna discover that in just a moment. So let's accomplish that. So just to remind us, we have that layer targeted, and you'll notice that this panel here is giving you options as to what you want to accomplish with this layer in terms of altering it into a 3D shape. The only time you're going to see this panel is if you're in a 2D environment. All right, so as a reminder, we're in the blank layer. I'm going to go access my 3D panel, and we're going to choose a primitive. So we have options here: 3D postcard and extrusion, which we're going to talk about those later. We have a mesh from preset and the depth map, and of course a 3D volume. Now my mesh from preset, I currently have a soda can. I can choose any of these options: a cube, a cylinder, a donut, and so forth. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and choose a hat. I'm going to target that. Once we have it selected, let's hit create. All right, and there's my hat. Now I would like you to notice that immediately what we're getting is your entire interface has been thrown into a 3D environment, a 3D scene. So I'm spacebar Alt Option, pull this to the left, and if I notice, no matter how far I pull away, this has all become one big 3D environment. As you can see, it's encompassing my entire interface. Okay, and if we can see right down here, we even have numbers in inches in this case as to the size of this particular hat, if we want to print this out with a 3D printer. So immediately what we have is a secondary view. Now most 3D programs have 4 up views, so like a front, side, back, and top. This one is going to work in Photoshop. We don't quite have that capabilities in 3D, but we're using this view to view various options. For example, like the left side, the right side, the top and bottom, and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to go put it back over to the right. All right, so I'm going to actually close this out for now. So we're going to talk about that later. And what we're looking at is I'm navigating my 3D camera. So as if we're at the camera and we're moving around the object, I'm seeing it from that perspective. Now, how do I actually know that? Now, if we look right over here, we can see that this 3D environment has changed. It used to be options for altering our single layer into a 3D environment. Now you have other options here: environment, a scene, the 3D camera, which is what we're in, targeting the hat, the surfaces for the hat, for texturing the hat, as well as our 3D lights. Okay, so we're going to start with how to basically navigate around in a scene to make life so much easier when it comes to pulling 3D objects together to tell a story. So in a 2D environment, the one tool that we utilize to move anything around is our move tool. It's the exact same thing in a 3D environment. Once you go into a 3D environment, take note of your options bar up here. you'll notice I have several options for navigating. I have a roll or rotate command, which rotates on two different axes, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. My roll command, which will rotate on the Z axis. The pan, which will move your object or pan your object on the X or the Y axis. And then our 3D slide, which will move your objects in and out into the Z axis. And of course, we have our camera tool here to make adjustments there. Now, currently, if I want to navigate anything can be navigated inside a 3D environment. A scene, a camera, or your 3D objects. So we're going to learn to kind of navigate with the camera at first. I have the rotate command targeted. With the camera selected, I'm going to click and hold your mouse, and you'll move it around. You know your camera is selected because your plane is moving around. As I mentioned earlier, is that it's as if we're looking through the eyes of the camera from a certain perspective, and I can move it up and down. And all I'm doing is clicking and holding my mouse, moving it right to left, up and down to view all sides of my 3D object. All right, now if I want to move just the hat itself, we will need to target that, but let's go play around with the roll command. Target the next one over, and this restricts your rotation on the Z axis. Now you notice this colorization here, X, Y, and Z, red, green, blue. Red for your X, green for Y, which we don't actually see showing here, but blue for your Z axis going in and out, giving you your depth in your 3D scene. So target the pan tool. This is for your X and your Y movement. So right to left and up and down. So I'm just moving the camera up and down or right to left. If I go to the slide command, target that icon there, then again we're moving the camera in and out of the scene. So into the scene closer, out of the scene as I move back. Okay. All right. So those are your basic navigational tools. Now what if I want to actually navigate only the 3D object? Now once we come right down here to the hat on our 3D panel, target the hat. Now you notice these 3D widgets will come up. Now I'm going to go over here to the roll command. I can just click and drag. I don't have to click on the hat. I can click outside. Just as long as the 3D object is selected, I can target outside and just start to roll things around utilizing that command. I can also target the roll command, which we're rotating on the Z axis, and I can do the same for the pan. Right to left, up and down, and you can see this passing through the ground plane. It gives you an idea as to where things are. Now if I go over here to the slide tool, it's going to slide it back and forth in Z depth. Okay, so if I actually target this, and now a quick way to actually activate the camera, I can actually click on it physically if I want to go to the camera, or just click and release on the ground plane and it will default to the camera, and I can move this up like so, see it from a different perspective, then target my hat here, or actually click physically on the hat and target the slide tool and slide it in and out into Z depth. So depending on the angle that you're viewing your hat, it will move into Z space accordingly. All right, so I'm going to target the camera. I'm going to rotate it back just a little bit. And we have another element in here, which is our lights. Now watch this. I'm going to target the lights. This is an infinite light, which means it's going to act like sunlight. So it'll only rotate. Now, the hat itself is pretty bright because there's more than one light in here that's really brightening up the scene too much. If I turn off this infinite light, which is your little eyeball here on the left-hand side, you can turn any of those things off. You can see that the scene is still being lit. You would think that the scene would go dark if you turn off the light. And that's because inside the environment tab, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on again. Or actually, let's keep that off for now. Go to the environment, and I'm going to turn the eyeball off. and the environment is lighting the scene with other options. So if I target the environment here, you can see right down under environment, under your properties. So any of these objects that you target, we have properties for each one. So this works like our options for our 3D environment. Okay, so go to my environment, and right down here we have what's called an IBL lighting. It's lighting the scene with an image-based light. Just turn that off. There. Okay. Now, let's turn it off again. Now we have a pretty much dark object that's not being lit at all. Now if we go back to the infinite light, we get to see in terms of shading what we are going to light. So targeting the light source, I can move this around. Okay, so from the top, the back, over to the left, over to the right. Okay, so just play around with this. This is really a lot of fun. With the light source targeted, lights have properties. Right down here, we have properties for the intensity or the shadows. We'll get more into this later, but just kind of get a feel that we can intensify our light or bring down the effect of the light. I'll bring it up a little bit and bring it across. You can see the shadow actually affects the ground plane as well. So it gives you a sense of depth and positioning. You'll notice also we have a 3D widget on our object, okay? And I can mouse over them and they're going to highlight a bright yellow. Now, if I look at the x-axis and I actually hover my mouse over that arrow, it's going to constrain its movement to that x-axis or direction of this x-axis. If I go to these, do the same for the y. Remember x, y, and z, red, green, and blue. All right. So x, y, and z, red, green, and blue. And I'm going to go back here to the z-axis, and I'm actually clicking on the little widget, the arrow. Now, if I target these rotation, these curved symbols here, I can rotate on each of those axes. So it restricts it, it'll isolate it. And let's go to this one here. I can also resize or stretch the little rectangles there on the side. Click and hold. I can stretch my object or squish it flat, whichever you like. I can do the same thing on either axis. This is my y-axis. I can flatten it out completely or bring it back up. And I'm going to go over here to the z-axis and the same thing with that. So if I want to resize everything equally and constrain the proportions, I'll just place my mouse right in the center on this cube and just drag diagonally, okay? Drag diagonally, and it works wonderfully. Okay, there we are. So I can enlarge the hat or reduce the size of the hat. So that's pretty handy. I find it easier just to go ahead and toggle through my different modes here. So in other words, the V key is the shortcut for my move tool. If I go to my properties, and I think by default, I'm going to hit Command or Control K. And if we go over to the interface, I believe it is, I'm going to go back to General here. But yet, I'm going to go target the tools. Okay, there we go. Right down here, we have use shift key to enable tool switch. I turn that off. That way I don't have to use the shift key to alter through these various tools. So with the move tool targeted, if I hit the V key which is a shortcut, I can toggle through each of these tools. So rotation, roll, pan. I'm just using the V key on my keyboard, and also my my slide tool to move the object in and out. Okay, so and you can see my tool is switching as I'm actually, and I'll just bring it here so you can see it a little easier. There we go. Okay, so tool is switching. All right. So how about if we get into how to build 3D objects from scratch. So these are primitives already done for us. Adobe has given us a bunch of these in there. But what if you want to build your own? Let's look at some of the foundations of custom creating 3D objects.